What up, YouTube? T-Movies here. With the new Natalie Woods documentary premiering tonight, I decided to go ahead and do my top 10 favorite Natalie Wood movies. Tragically, she passed away way too young. I can't remember how old she was. I think she was like in her late 40s when she passed. She was actually a really terrific actress. She was very attractive, of course, but she had really good talent. I mean, she was married to Robert Wagner. She was also really good friends with Christopher Walken, which was pretty cool. And whether it's whether you think that Wagner had anything to do with with her death or not, you know, of course, her death ended up being a very ended up being a mystery, and still have no idea what really happened to her. But that aside, she's been in some really great stuff. I mean, she started out acting as when she was a child. She's done some really iconic classic films. So with that being said, here's my 10 favorite Natalie Wood movies. All right. Coming in at number 10, I'm going to go with a film titled Inside Daisy Clover, which is directed by Robert Mulligan, and it tells the classic story of fame and fortune destroying a young star's life, and it stars Woods as a 1930s tomboy who becomes a overnight sensation after submitting a recorded song to a talent show. She ends up suing. She soon signs is signed to a contract by a studio boss played by Christopher Plummer, but the glitz and glamour of Hollywood ends up taking a other territory, especially when her mother, played by Ruth Gordon, ends up being confined to a mental asylum, and her playboy husband, played by Robert Redford in his debut film role, ends up leaving her. It's kind of similar to a Star is Born in a weird way, except without the her being falling in love with Plumber or anything like that. Robert Redford was really cool in this. Christopher Plummer, he's Plummer, he's always great. Natalie Wood, probably one of her her best performance. She actually ended up scoring a Golden Globe nomination and a well deserved one. Really good flick. I mean, if you guys had not seen Inside Daisy Clover yet, pretty decent. All right, coming in at number 9, I'm gonna go with the comedy The Great Race, directed by the Pink Panther director Blake Edwards. Of course, the film got released in the 50s, I believe, and it also stars Tony Curtis, who and of course it's the this epic farce centers on a 22,000 mile competition between the heroic Leslie Gallant, played by Tony Curtis, and the villainous Professor Fate, played by Jack Lemmon. Wood co-stars as this photojournalist named Maggie DeBose, who's this outspoken suffragette, racing herself in a car owned by a New Yorker's biggest newspaper. And this is a pretty funny one. Of course, it is a comedy, a classic, starring the likes of Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis. You had Vivian Vince. Of course, it was actually released in 1965. Natalie Wood was pretty funny in this. Shows that she could do comedy really well. If you guys never really seen The Great Race yet, go check it out. I mean, Blake Edwards was a comedy directing genius. With stuff like Pink Panther, and Great Race is a really good one. All right, coming in at number 8, I'm gonna go with the film Love with a Proper Stranger. Now, it stars Natalie Wood, who portrays this innocent New York sales clerk named Angie Rosany, uh, who's of course from a Italian family, who ends up engaging in a short-lived affair with this jazz musician named Rocky Papasano, played by Steve McQueen. But Angie ends up becoming pregnant, and she ends up tracking down Rocky, hoping he'll pay for her abortion. And so, Rocky ends up agreeing to help. But after seeing the abortion facility, he refuses to let Angie go through the procedure, and he wants to make her a honest woman, and he wants to have a kid. Steve McQueen, he is like it's pretty cool, like a very different Steve McQueen role. Because when you think of Steve McQueen, you think of action roles like Bullet, the Hunter. This is a very over the top, different McQueen role. Like not really the McQueen that you're used to seeing. But either Steve McQueen was really decent. His on-screen chemistry with Natalie Wood was great. Really good little film. If you guys haven't seen it, go check this one out. All right. Coming in at number 7, I'm going to go with Mervyn Leroy's directed film, Gypsy. Now, the film, of course, tells the story of Rose Havoc, played by Rosalind Russell, who pushes her two daughters into the entertainment industry and traveling and promoting them with minimal success. So, like, after years in the business, her younger daughter June, quits and ends up eloping, leaving Rose searching for work for her other less talented daughter named Louise, played by Wood, and it's a pretty decent one. Wood also scored a Golden Globe nomination for this. The mother and daughter dynamic chemistry between Rosalind and Natalie Wood is pretty decent. And of course, Louise ends up transforming herself into the popular Gypsy Rose Lee, and she ends up gaining notoriety, and she ends up growing tired of her mother's influence. Yeah, Gypsy is a really decent film, from the golden age of Hollywood. Rosalind, gave a pretty decent performance there too. So yeah, if you guys have not really seen Gypsy, it's another good Wood movie worth checking out. All right, coming in at number 6, I'm gonna go with Splendor in the Grass. Now this is a melodrama, and it stars Wood, who portrays Wilma Dean Loomis, who's this fragile Kenneth girl who falls in love with this playboy played by Warren Beatty in his film debut, and he ends up being pressure from their parents, and the sense of the lust ends up sending her into a aspiring into and sends her into a heartbreak and insanity. And so William Inge's Oscar-winning screenplay also ends up being paying the young woman's sexual repressions as a attached to sibilantly at times, and it's a very interesting melodramatic weeping film. Warren Beatty and Natalie Wood were both directed by Elia Kazan. Pat Hingle was in this. Not of course. Natalie Wood actually scored an Oscar nomination for this, but lost out to Sophia Loren. So there's that. Yeah, really decent film. Very heartfelt flick. Warren Beatty, probably one of his coolest performances. I mean, it is crazy to believe that this was actually his first feature film he did. But yeah, if you guys ever seen Splendid in the Grass, really decent flick. Alright, coming in at number 5, I'm going to go with Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. I always mispronounce his name, this film's title. But, you know, this is an interesting satire film. You've got Natalie Wood, who portrays the role of Carol, who's this Los Angeles sociopath who ends up attending a group of therapy weekend getaway with her husband named Bob, played by Robert Culp. And so, like, after tapping into their feelings, the two find themselves sexually liberated, with Carol even accepting Bob's affair with another woman and encouraging more infamously, and they end up sharing. And of course, they also and you know having a affair with be friends with this married couple named Ted and Alice, played by Elliot Gould and Diane Cannon. And things get weirder when two couples find themselves in bed with one another, and it's an interesting. It's actually a pretty cool like a sex-based comedy. Or for the leads, it's mainly them as or Elliot Gould, Natalie Wood, or four leads was terrific in this film. Of course, directed by Paul Mazursky's. great performances by all the cast. It's a very interesting countercultural comedic masterpiece that gets really decent with Asian or. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen this flick, but it's actually pretty good. So if you guys haven't really seen Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, go check it out. I mean, it had the name. I always found the name to be a bit weird, but that aside, it's still pretty decent flick. All right, coming in at number four, I'm gonna go with The Searchers, directed by iconic director John Ford. Portraying, of course, you got John Wayne, who portrays Ethan Edwards. He's this lonely, angry Civil War veteran with this rabbi hatred for Native American. And this movie was a bit controversial at the time, but they end up, a band of communists ends up kidnapping his niece, played by Natalie Wood, and end up burning down her family's home, and he ends up embarking on a search to find her. And believe it or not, the movie Taxi Driver, directed by Scorsese, starring De Niro, that was actually an influence of The Searchers. The Searchers, of course, has the likes of Jeffrey Hunter, Valeria Mills. The Searchers is terrific. Great performances by Natalie Wood, John Wayne, probably one of his coolest performances. I mean, who does not love John Wayne? I mean, John Wayne was the man, and The Searchers is a really cool Western based film. So if you guys haven't really seen The Searchers, go check that one out. That line I gotta do best John Wayne movies. He's been his own iconic masterpiece films. I mean, if you guys never really seen any of John Wayne movies, period, go check some of his stuff out. Alright. Number three, I'm gonna go with West Side Story. Most people probably add this as their number one favorite, but my number one I kind of like a little more. But West Side Story, of course, directed by Sound and Music director Robert Wise. Based on the musical by Jerome Robbins. Of course, it is loosely based on William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And it takes place, and of course, it stars Natalie Wood as Maria, who's this Puerto Rican who ends up falling in love with this gang member, Caucasian gang member named Tony, played by Richard Beymer, who was met with raised eyebrows, and of course it really showcased Natalie Wood's singing voice. And of course you got Rita Moreno was in this, Russ Tomlin featured some. Of course, it ended up winning the Oscar for Best Picture. One of the best musicals of the '60s. It's terrific. Natalie Wood showed that she could really sing perfectly. Probably one of her best performances she's given. Rita Moreno was terrific. Yeah, West Side Story is one of the most iconic masterpiece musicals of the '60s. So if you guys haven't really seen the original West Side Story, go check it out, especially before Steven Spielberg's remake comes out later this year, which I cannot wait to check out. Hopefully that doesn't get pushed back, but we'll see what happens. Alright, coming in at number two, I'm going to go with Rebel Without a Cause. Directed by Nicholas Ray, based on a book by Irving Shulman, starring James Dean, Sal Manio. And fun fact, the line in that movie The Room where Tommy Wiseau says, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa." James Dean actually says that line in Rebel Without a Cause. So now you get to see where Tommy Wiseau got that line from. Anyway, Rebel Without a Cause is terrific. One of the most iconic movies of the '50s, starring James Dean, who of course is this who of course is very iconic in the red jacket, white T-shirt, jeans. I mean, he was one of those. Before there was a Zac Efron, he was kind of the hot job of that era. He was like the Zac Efron of the '50s. But of course, you got Natalie Wood, who portrays this good girl named Judy, and you got Sal Mineo, who's the closest outcast Plato, who are equally as isolated by their families, and the three form James Dean's character, and Sal and Wood all form a bond that ends up very tragically. And this movie is a terrific one. A really very cool rebellion based film. James Dean, Natalie Wood, and Sal Mineo all had great performances with one another. Nicholas Reyes, he was a pretty talented filmmaker. He did a great job with this. I mean, if you guys never really seen Rebel Without Cause, another really good one movie worth checking out. All right. Now, my number one favorite Natalie Wood movie. What is better than West Side Story or Rebel Without Cause? My favorite one is literally a film where she had her breakthrough role, and that is Miracle on 34th Street. Miracle on 34th Street, starring Maureen O'Hara, Edmund Gwenn, one of the best Christmas movies there is. You got Wood, who gives her who really started in the movie when she was only 9 years old, and of course tells the story of old man of a kindly old man played by Edwin Gwen, who starts working at Macy's as their Santa, but it turns out he's also the real deal, as Natalie Wood's character is this precious little girl who finds out when she ends up pulling his beer, and but Delta ends up not really believing him, and it's so actually the girl's mother, played by Maureen O'Hara, and the young lawyer, played by John Payne. She proved that he's the real deal. And, Natalie Wood, it was like her debut film role. She was terrific. Her scenes with Chris Kringle was decent. Of course, it was pretty cool seeing, Santa Claus coming after the Macy's parade. That was a pretty cool scene. Miracle on 34th Street is just such an iconic Christmas masterpiece. One of the best Christmas movies of the '60s and of the golden age and all. Yeah, one of the best ones. If you guys never really seen the original Miracle on 34th Street, because there's also a remake, but the remake was okay. But the original is just the best form. It's of course a black and white classic. It's a Christmas movie you can watch every Christmas, and it never gets old. Definitely go check out Miracle on 34th Street. Alright. That's pretty much it. Let me do the quick rundown. 10. Inside Daisy Clover. 9. The Great Race. 8. Love with a Proper Stranger. 7. Gypsy. 6. Splendid in the Grass. 5. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. 4. The Searchers. 3. West Side Story. 2. Rebel Without Cause. And 1. Miracle on 34th Street. Now there's a few other ones I probably could have added. Let's see. Brainstorm, which I believe that was her final film, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that was actually her final film. Of course, Brainstorm had Christopher Walken in it. Let's see, what else was she in? Sex and the Single Girl she was in. The Burning Hills, Peeper, The Ghost and Mrs. Muller, Meteor, The Star, Cat on a Houghton Roof, The Silver Chalice, Tomorrow is Forever, a film called The Affair. She's been in some really iconic flicks, and sad she passed away at a very, very young age. But she of course really left behind a really great body work. Let me leave it to you guys. What are some of your favorite Natalie Wood movies? Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for more notifications. This is T Movies signing off.